If you won't move into an assisted living facility, then pack your things and get out of my house. Those were the words my son Caleb shouted while looking straight into my eyes. I stood there in his kitchen, my kitchen, technically, bought with money I'd saved over 32 years sewing wedding dresses, with dishwater dripping from my worn hands onto the tile floor. I stayed silent. What could I say that would change anything? The front of my floral dress was damp. My calloused fingers trembled as I gripped the counter. Caleb stood in the doorway, wearing that same frown I'd seen since he was a boy. But my husband Robert had been gone for 13 years, and the 42-year-old man before me was no longer that child. "Mom, we need to talk." His voice was flat, rehearsed. I dried my hands on the embroidered kitchen towel and turned with what I hoped was a composed smile. "What is it, dear?" Madeline stepped in behind him. Red nails, sleek auburn hair, dark lipstick perfectly applied. She crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe like someone settling in to watch a show. "We've decided," Caleb said, avoiding my eyes. "This house feels cramped. The kids need more space, and you're getting older. Maybe it's time you found a place that fits you better." My heart thudded hard. I knew what was coming. "A place that fits me better," I repeated slowly. "You mean a nursing home?" "Mom, there are some really nice ones nearby. They have activities, friends your age, nurses." "A nursing home?" I cut him off. "You're trying to send me to a nursing home." The silence grew heavy. Madeline pretended to scroll through her phone, but I saw the corner of her mouth twitch. Finally, Caleb looked at me. In his eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before. Coldness. Pure, calculated coldness. "Not a nursing home, Mom. An assisted living community. There's a difference." "The only difference," I said evenly, "is that you're trying to get rid of me with a prettier name." "Then go," he shouted. "If you won't move into the facility, pack your bags and leave. This is my house." His yell echoed through the kitchen, bounced off the walls I'd painted, through the hallway where I'd hung pictures, up the staircase I'd cleaned every day for 3 years. Madeline tried to hide her smirk, but I saw it. That flash of triumph. That was the moment something inside me broke. Not my heart. It had shattered long ago, piece by piece. It was the final thread connecting me to the illusion that I still had a family. I took a deep breath, looked at the son I no longer recognized, and did the last thing he expected. I smiled. "All right, Caleb, I'll pack my things." His face shifted, confusion mixed with fear. He'd expected tears, pleading, drama, but no. There was only chilling calm. I walked upstairs to the small room where I slept. 10 square meters, a twin bed, a window facing the neighbor's brick wall. I took out my old leather suitcase, the same one from 3 years ago, when I'd moved in, believing my son's promises about family and taking care of you. 3 years ago, I'd been living alone in a small Queens apartment, managing fine on my pension. The apartment wasn't much, but it was mine. Then Caleb started visiting more often, bringing takeout and that charming smile he'd inherited from his father. "Mom, aren't you lonely?" he'd ask. "What if something happens? You're not getting any younger." Age. That word they used like a weapon. "I'm fine, dear. I have friends, my routines, but wouldn't it be nice to see the grandkids every day?" Madeline would add, sweet as syrup. "Our house is big. The kids adore you. We take such good care of you. The truth came one evening over dinner. Caleb scratched his head awkwardly. Actually, Mom, there's something else. We're thinking of expanding the company, but we're short on capital. If you sold your apartment and invested with us, it would be like a family partnership. I should have seen it then. But he was my son. How could I say no? I sold the apartment for $180,000 and handed every dollar to Caleb, believing I was investing in our family's future. 3 years passed. I never saw a single penny back. The memories came in layers as I folded my clothes. My grandmother's jewelry vanishing, the pearl brooch, the gold ring, the amber necklace, priceless heirlooms from when she fled Warsaw during the war. Maybe you put it somewhere and forgot, Caleb had said, not looking up from his phone. I didn't forget. Madeleine appeared at the door, smiling faintly. Mother-in-law, at your age, forgetting things is normal. My grandmother was the same way before the nursing home. The nursing home. She'd been planting that seed for months. I never saw those pieces again. 6 months later, I saw Madeleine's vacation photo from Cancun, wearing a bracelet identical to my grandmother's. Oh, I bought it at a craft market. She'd laughed when I asked. I swallowed my tears and pretended to believe her because I was afraid. But the worst memory was from 8 months ago. I'd come downstairs for water and heard Madeleine on the phone with her mother. Just a few more months and she'll be in that nursing home. I'll turn her room into my walk-in closet. She laughed. No, she suspects nothing. Still thinks her son loves her. I froze on the staircase. We've already spent most of the money from her apartment, she continued casually. But once she's gone, we'll sell this house, buy something smaller, and pocket the difference. Caleb does whatever I say. Weak men are easy to control. I went back to my room and cried until my pillow was soaked. Yet I still did nothing because I kept hoping Caleb would realize, would stand up for me. Foolish me. Now, standing in that cramped room for the last time, I felt no more tears. I took out a wooden box of photographs. Robert and me on our wedding day. Caleb as a baby, my mother in her flower-dusted apron. All gone now. I closed the suitcase with a soft click. An hour after Caleb's ultimatum, I carried it downstairs. Caleb sat on the couch I'd bought 40 years ago. Madeleine beside him, triumph on her face. The doorbell rang. Caleb opened the door with an annoyed sigh. His face, I'll never forget it. A sleek black limousine waited outside. The uniformed driver opened the back door and out stepped a man in his 70s. Silver hair, navy suit that cost more than Caleb made in months. Harrison Walsh, Robert's former business partner, owner of Walsh Industries, the wealthiest man in our neighborhood. And he'd come for me. Caleb froze, mouth open. Madeleine turned pale. Harrison walked in, heading straight toward me as if my son didn't exist. Elena, he said warmly, are you ready? I picked up my suitcase and gave Caleb one last look. Thank you for everything, Caleb. The house is all yours now. I stepped outside into the crisp March air. Through the limousine's rear window, I saw him still standing motionless on the porch, watching his mother leave in elegance. For the first time in 3 years, I felt freedom. Inside the limousine, the scent of leather and cologne filled the air. Harrison sat beside me, keeping respectful distance as the car glided away. I held the suitcase handle tightly, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from relief and disbelief. Eleanor, are you all right? Harrison asked softly. I don't even know how I feel, Harrison. It's all too new. He nodded. We sat in silence, watching the city drift by. Can I ask? I finally said. How did you know to come today? Harrison turned to me, tenderness and sadness in his eyes. I didn't know. Pure chance. I was driving through the neighborhood and saw Peter playing in the yard. I thought about stopping to say hello, but something told me to come back later. When I returned and saw you with that suitcase, saw your son's face, I understood everything. He threw me out, I said flatly. My own son. Harrison's hands clenched. I know. Do you know what it's like to look at the child you raised and realize you don't recognize them? No, he admitted. But I know what it's like to watch someone you care about being hurt and feel powerless to stop it. The words hung between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. When we reached his building, a glass tower in downtown Manhattan, I needed his arm to step out. The doorman bowed to him, smiled at me. I was invisible in my simple dress. The mirrored elevator reflected a 68-year-old woman. Gray hair, swollen eyes, wrinkled floral dress. You still look beautiful, Elena, Harrison said gently. You always have. I wanted to protest, but the sincerity in his voice silenced me. His penthouse on the 23rd floor took my breath away. Marble floors, high ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows flooding the space with golden light, elegant yet warm. Your room is upstairs, Harrison said, carrying my suitcase. You have your own bathroom, closet and balcony. Make yourself at home, Eleanor. This is your house now. Your house now. Those words echoed as I climbed the polished stairs. The bedroom was twice the size of my room at Caleb's. King-size bed with white sheets, golden sunlight through linen curtains. The air smelled like possibility. I sat on the edge of the bed, and the tears finally came, from exhaustion, from years of pain released. I cried because someone had seen me when my own son had stopped looking. When I looked up, the city glowed under night lights. My phone vibrated. 47 missed calls. 23 messages. All from Caleb. Mom, where are you? Please answer. Who was that man? Can we talk? Mom, I'm worried. I laughed quietly without humor. Worried? After throwing me out? I turned off the phone. A soft knock. Elena, I made tea, Harrison said, entering with a silver tray. He sat by the window, pouring tea. The scent of chamomile and lemon balm, my favorite blend. How did you know? I asked. Robert told me. He said you always drank it before bed. The mention of Robert made my heart ache. Why did you come for me today, Harrison? Really? He paused, fingers trembling. I need to tell you something I've kept to myself for many years. My heart raced. I've always loved you, he said quietly. The silence was profound. From the day Robert introduced you as his fiancée, you were 23, wearing that yellow dress with flowers. Your smile lit up the room. I knew I'd missed the one chance of my life. I couldn't speak. Robert was my best friend. You loved him, so I kept my feelings locked away. I married Laura, had children, built my life. But Eleanor, his voice caught. You've always been the only one in my heart. Tears fell again. For the first time in so long, someone truly saw me. Laura passed 5 years ago, he continued. I honored my mourning, but I never found courage to look for you. You seemed happy with your son. Harrison stood, then did something that stopped time. He knelt before me, a 73-year-old billionaire kneeling before a seamstress. But today, when I saw you leaving with such grace, dignity intact despite everything, I knew I couldn't lose you again. Not ever. Harrison, He gently stopped me. You don't have to say anything. Just know you're not alone anymore. You'll never be alone again. He kissed my forehead, a promise, then quietly left. I sat for hours staring at the glittering city, holding cold tea, feeling his kiss on my skin. For the first time in decades, I felt truly seen. The next morning, I woke to gentle sunlight and city sounds. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then I remembered. I was free. After showering in the luxurious bathroom, I dressed in my best grey dress. Harrison was reading the newspaper when I came down. Good morning, I made coffee. Just a little cream, right? You remembered. Put on something nice, he said after coffee. We have an important appointment. What kind? Trust me. An hour later, we arrived at a sleek glass building in the financial district. His attorney, Thomas Bradford, waited in a conference room. A distinguished man in his 50s, he shook my hand with unusual respect. Mrs. King, it's an honor. Harrison pulled out a chair. Thomas, go ahead. The lawyer opened a blue folder. Mrs. King, your late husband, Robert, left a notarized will. Are you aware? Yes. Caleb said everything was handled. He said it was complicated, that I wouldn't understand. Thomas exchanged a glance with Harrison. Mrs. King, your son lied to you. The world stopped. What do you mean? Robert's will, notarized 3 months before he died in 2012, divided Walsh King Holdings, shares 40% to you, 40% to Caleb, 20% to a charitable foundation. He pushed a document toward me. Robert's signature, my name, 40%. But Caleb said, since I didn't understand business, everything should be under his name. I signed a power of attorney. You signed for him to manage it, Thomas corrected firmly. Not to steal it. You're still the rightful owner of 40%. My head spun. There's more, Harrison said, voice hard. Thomas pulled out another folder. 2 years ago, January 2023, Caleb sold all company shares to an investment group. The company was valued at $4.2 million. Your 40% equals $1.68 million. The number hit like a physical blow. He forged your signature, Thomas continued, showing photocopies where my supposed signature looked nothing like mine, and kept all the money, $168 million, while I slept in a cramped room, while I was humiliated daily. My son had been sitting on nearly $2 million of my money, plus the $180,000 from my apartment. I want to sue him, I said. My voice was steady, cold. I want every cent back. Thomas smiled, a lawyer who knows he'll win. The lawsuit is ready. It just needs your signature. I took the expensive pen and signed. Eleanor Marie King. Clear, bold, unmistakable. Each stroke was a declaration of war. Each letter was a choice to stop being a victim. Caleb will be served within 48 hours, Thomas said. He'll have 15 days to respond. But with this evidence, forged signatures, bank records, original documents, he has no way out. As we left, my mind spun, but inside was a new feeling. Power. In the car, Harrison asked, "Are you sure? Suing your own son won't be easy. He'll fight back. Madeleine will poison him further. It could get ugly." I looked at him. I'm sure. My grandchildren need to know their grandmother wasn't someone to be trampled on. That self-respect isn't for sale. That stealing from your mother has consequences. I'm done being afraid, Harrison. I'm done being silent. I'm done disappearing. He studied my face, then nodded slowly. Now that's the Eleanor I remember. The woman Robert fell in love with. The woman I've loved all these years. He took my hand. I didn't pull away. As we drove back, my phone buzzed again. More calls from Caleb. More messages. I blocked his number with one swift motion. Some doors, once closed, should stay closed. That night, I stood on my balcony looking at the glittering city. Somewhere out there, Caleb was panicking. Somewhere, Madeleine was furious. And somewhere inside me, a woman I'd thought was dead was waking up, fighting back, ready for war. 2 days later, at 7 in the morning, a process server handed Caleb the lawsuit papers at his office. Thomas called me an hour later. "It's done." From his secretary's description, I'd say today is the worst day of your son's life. I hung up and looked out at the sunrise over Manhattan. Good. My phone, I'd gotten a new number, remained silent. Caleb couldn't reach me. Harrison had also hired a private investigator, Marcus Palmer, to monitor the situation. "Just to know what we're dealing with," Harrison explained over breakfast. "Knowledge is power, Elena." Marcus's first report arrived that afternoon. Caleb's company, King Logistics, was drowning in debt. Unpaid taxes, $180,000. Overdue salaries, $95,000. Vendor debts, $245,000. Total, $520,000. "He's been robbing Peter to pay Paul," Marcus said during our meeting. "The company's been hemorrhaging money for 2 years. Bad investments, poor management, and," he paused, "significant, unauthorized withdrawals." "Madeleine," I said, "that's my guess, but I need more time to prove it." Harrison studied the numbers. "I can help with that." He made a phone call. 20 minutes later, he owned Caleb's debts through intermediary companies. "Now we control his fate," Harrison said quietly. "When the time is right." 3 weeks passed. 3 weeks of me learning to live again. Morning coffee on the balcony. Afternoon walks in Central Park. Evening conversations with Harrison that stretched long into the night, talking about everything and nothing, slowly building something I was afraid to name. Meanwhile, Caleb was falling apart. Marcus's reports painted a picture of desperation. 213 phone calls to my old number, dozens of emails, visits to Harrison's building, turned away by security. An attempt to contact Thomas Bradford, blocked. "He's panicking," Marcus reported. "His wife is another story." "What do you mean?" Marcus hesitated. "Mrs. King, I think you need to see something." He handed me a folder. Inside were photographs. Madeline entering a hotel, Madeline leaving an apartment building, Madeline kissing someone who definitely wasn't Caleb. A woman, young, athletic, dark hair. The photos were dated over the past year. Her name is Julia Foster, Marcus said. 32, fitness trainer at Madeline's gym. They've been together for at least a year, maybe longer. I stared at the photos, feeling that strange satisfaction again. The perfect wife had secrets of her own. There's more. Marcus showed me financial records. Remember your grandmother's jewelry? It was sold for $58,000, not $23,000 like the jeweler claimed. Madeline's cousin owns the shop. They split the difference. My hands trembled with rage. And the Cancun trip? Madeline went with Julia, not her girlfriends. Paid for with a credit card linked to your son's business account. Everything was true. Every suspicion confirmed. Does Caleb know? I asked. He found out 6 months ago. Confronted her. She cried, begged forgiveness, promised to end it. Marcus shook his head. She didn't. They're still meeting twice a week. My son, who'd stolen from me, was too weak to throw out the woman betraying him. On a Saturday morning, 3 weeks after being served, I made my decision. I'm ready to face him, I told Harrison. Are you sure? I need to look him in the eye. I turned on my old phone. It exploded with notifications. I ignored them all and called Caleb. He answered on the first ring. Mom, thank God we need to Grant's restaurant. Tonight, 8 o'clock. You and Madeline. Don't be late. I hung up before he could respond. Harrison watched me with something like pride. You're magnificent when you're in control. I learned from the best, I said, thinking of all those years watching Robert negotiate business deals. I chose a black knee-length dress I'd sewn for myself but never worn. Low heels, hair loose over my shoulders, silver strands catching the light. Deep red lipstick. When I came downstairs, Harrison stood abruptly. Elena, you look stunning. Revenge is best served cold, I smiled, but one can still look beautiful. Grant's was elegant. Crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, the kind of place where dinner cost a week's grocery money from my old life. Caleb and Madeline were already seated when we arrived at exactly 8 o'clock. When they saw me, their faces changed. Caleb went pale. Madeline's eyes widened. I was no longer the old woman in a damp floral dress. I was myself again. I walked toward them, feeling every gaze follow me. Caleb jumped up, trying to hug me. I sidestepped him smoothly and sat across from them. A glass of red wine, please, I told the waiter. The air was thick with tension. Madeline fidgeted with her napkin. Caleb stared at the table. You two look quite polished, I said casually. Madeline, new dress. And Caleb, that's a nice watch. Tag Heuer, isn't it? Caleb swallowed hard. Mom, about the lawsuit. Oh, the lawsuit, I interrupted, smiling. Yes, we should talk about that. I opened my purse and placed a brown envelope in the middle of the table. What's that? Madeline asked, her voice shaking. Open it and see. Caleb's hands trembled as he opened it. Inside were copies of forged documents, my falsified signature, bank statements showing $1.68 million transferred into his account. Where did you get this? He whispered. Your father was a careful man, Caleb. He kept copies of everything. I just never thought I'd use them against my own son. Mom, I can explain. Then go ahead, I said coldly. Explain why you forged your mother's signature, why you stole nearly $2 million from me, why you let me sleep in a storage-sized room, while you spent my money on Swiss watches and luxury dinners. The waiter brought my wine. I took a long sip, letting the moment stretch. Madeline tried to regain composure. Mother-in-law, we didn't mean... I turned to her, my stare making her recoil. Be quiet. You have no right to speak to me. You stole my grandmother's jewelry, turned me into a maid in my own home, and planned to throw me into a nursing home so you could turn my room into a closet. Madeline went pale. How did you? Houses have ears, Madeline, and you talk very loud on the phone. Caleb buried his face in his hands. Mom, this is all my fault. Madeline has nothing to do with it. Good. I leaned forward. Then admit it. Admit you stole my money, threw me out, and screamed at me like an animal. Tears rolled down his face, but I felt nothing. No pity, no softness. I don't know what happened to you, Caleb. The boy I raised is gone. All that's left is a coward who chose money over his mother. Mom, I'm sorry. I laughed, dry and empty. You're only sorry because you got caught, because now you'll have to give everything back, every cent, with interest and damages. I stood, grabbed my purse. Funny, I once sold my apartment to invest in you. $180,000. And while I lived cramped in a tiny room, you sat on nearly $2 million of my money. The company was struggling. Struggling? I raised my voice. A few people turned. I didn't care. Struggling to buy new cars? To vacation in Cancun? To buy designer dresses while your mother washed your clothes? The silence was suffocating. Your lawyer will deal with mine, I said, stepping back. Either you return what belongs to me peacefully, or the court will make you. And trust me, Caleb, it'll hurt a lot more. Mom, wait. I turned one last time. One more thing. When I die, and it won't be anytime soon, because now I have a reason to live longer. Don't come to my funeral. Don't shed fake tears. Don't pretend to be a devoted son. You had your chance, and you threw it away. I walked out with my head high, Harrison right behind me. His driver was waiting. Only when the car started moving did my body begin to shake. You were perfect, Harrison said softly, taking my hand. A single tear rolled down my cheek. Not from sadness, from relief. I'd said everything, but as we drove through the Manhattan streets, I had no idea that dinner was only the beginning. Madeline's real counterattack was coming, and it would be far more vicious than I'd imagined. A week after the dinner, Harrison walked into my room holding a brown envelope, his expression a mix of anger and disgust. Elena, we need to talk. The investigator found something about Madeline. He opened the envelope. Inside were the photographs Marcus had shown me, plus new ones. Financial documents, bank statements, hotel receipts spanning more than a year. I already know, I said quietly. Marcus showed me last week. Harrison looked surprised. You knew? About Julia Foster? Yes. The affair, the jewelry sold for $58,000, the Cancun trip. All of it. Then you also know Caleb found out 6 months ago and did nothing? I nodded, feeling that familiar disappointment in my son. Harrison sat heavily in the chair. There's more, Eleanor. Marcus dug deeper into the company finances. He pulled out spreadsheets marked with yellow highlights. Over the past 3 years, $340,000 has disappeared from King Logistics. Unauthorized withdrawals, fake invoices, transfers to phantom accounts. Madeleine, every trail leads to 3 places: a joint account with Julia Foster, an investment under Madeleine's mother's name, and a secret apartment in Miami purchased solely in Madeleine's name. She didn't just betray your son, Elena. She's been systematically destroying him financially. I stood and walked to the window, watching the evening traffic below. My son wasn't just weak, he was a victim too, trapped in a toxic relationship so deep he couldn't see he was drowning. But that didn't excuse what he'd done to me. Give everything to Thomas, I said, my voice steel. This changes the entire case. Madeleine manipulated my son, used him to access family assets, sold my mother's belongings to fund an affair. That's not just infidelity, it's fraud. I want her prosecuted. Harrison gave a sharp smile. Already arranging it? 2 days later, I did something I swore I wouldn't do. I went back to the house. I stood on the porch where I'd left with my suitcase a month ago. Everything looked the same, but it felt foreign, like visiting a place you once knew in a dream. I rang the bell. Madeleine opened it, forcing a smile filled with hatred. What do you want? I want to speak with my son, alone. She was about to object, but Caleb appeared behind her. Thin, hollow-eyed, aged 10 years. Let her in, Madeleine. I stepped inside, feeling the weight of memories, the furniture I'd dusted, the floors I'd mopped, the walls that had heard me cry. Caleb led me to his office and closed the door. We looked at each other in silence. He looked broken, defeated. I know about Madeleine and Julia, I said bluntly. He froze, color draining from his face. I know she's been cheating on you. I know you found out 6 months ago and said nothing. I know she sold Grandma's jewelry for $58,000 and pocketed the difference. I know she spent $340,000 of your company's money on her affair. I stepped closer. And I know one more thing. You're a coward. Mom, it's not that simple. It's exactly that simple, I shouted. She manipulates you, uses you, betrays you, destroys you financially, and you still chose to throw your mother out instead of her. Caleb broke down completely, sobbing. I'm scared, Mom. Scared of losing the kids. Scared of being alone. Scared I can't survive without her. In that moment, I understood. My son wasn't just weak. He was trapped, hollowed out, turned into a puppet. Part of me felt pity, but the part that had been wounded most deeply couldn't forgive. Not yet. Caleb, look at me. I cupped his face, forcing him to meet my eyes. You have to choose. Either you wake up and realize she's destroying your life, or you'll lose everything, the company, your children, and your mother. I don't want to lose you, Mom. Then do something. Prove it. I stepped back. Because if you keep living like this, you've already lost me. I walked out. Madeleine stood in the living room, clearly having listened to everything. I passed her without a glance, but stopped at the door. Oh, Madeleine, I said coldly. I hope you enjoyed those Cancun trips, because your next vacation will be answering fraud charges in court. Her face drained of color as I walked out, feeling stronger than I had in years. That night, Thomas Bradford called. Elena, we have a problem. My heart sank. What kind of problem? Madeline just filed for a restraining order against you. She claims you threatened her life in front of witnesses. She's also requesting the court restrict your contact with Peter and Alice, saying your presence is psychologically harmful to them. The world crashed around me. My grandchildren. She was using my grandchildren as weapons. The hearing is next week, Thomas said quietly. I dropped the phone, hands shaking. For the first time since leaving that house, I felt true fear. Fear of losing Peter and Alice. Fear of never seeing them again. But Madeline had made one critical mistake. You never mess with an Italian grandmother's grandchildren. Never. The week before the hearing was the worst since everything began. Worse even than the day I was thrown out. I could endure humiliation, betrayal, loss, but being forbidden to see my grandchildren, that was a line no one could cross. For 3 nights, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the balcony watching the city lights, thinking of Peter and Alice, their gap-toothed smiles, Alice's sweet Grandma Elena, the Friday afternoons baking chocolate cake together. All of it could be stolen because of one woman's lies. Harrison tried everything to comfort me. Hot tea, warm blankets, soft music, nothing worked. Late one evening, he sat beside me and took my hand. Elena, look at me. I turned to him, eyes swollen from crying. That woman doesn't know who she's dealing with, he said firmly. She underestimates you, thinks you'll bow down. But she forgot one thing. What's that? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He smiled. That you're the strongest woman I've ever known. You raised a son alone, worked for decades, lost your husband, and still stood tall. This won't be the thing that breaks you. His words sparked something inside me, a small flame in the darkness. Then what do you want me to do? Harrison stood, walked to his study, and returned with a thick folder. I want us to stop defending and start attacking. I opened it. Balance sheets, contracts, financial reports, all relating to Caleb's company. David's business is on the brink of bankruptcy, Harrison explained. Poor management, reckless spending, bad investments. In 6 months, he'll owe over $500,000. I looked up. How do you know this? He smiled quietly. Because I bought up his debts through intermediary companies. I'm now his biggest creditor. I can make his company collapse anytime I want. It took me several seconds to process. You did this for me. Harrison looked at me for a long moment. I did it because Caleb deserves consequences. And because now you get to decide his future. I looked down at the documents, at those red numbers, realizing my son's fate was literally in my hands. For the first time in days, I smiled. Get me the best forensic accountant you know. I want every dollar of that company investigated for the past 3 years. Already arranged, Harrison said. Thomas has someone starting tomorrow. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully. Navy blue suit, hair neatly pinned, minimal makeup. I looked like the composed, dignified woman I was, not the dangerous old lady Madeline was painting me as. Thomas picked me up at 8. In the car, he reviewed the strategy. Stay calm. Don't react to provocation. Let me handle the talking. He looked at me seriously. And be ready. Madeline will lie. A lot. The courthouse was an old building downtown, smelling of paper and floor wax. Madeleine stood at the end of the corridor in a modest knee-length dress, light makeup, hair in a conservative bun. She looked like a model mother. Caleb stood beside her, head down, unable to look at me. The hearing room was small and airless. Judge Patricia Brennan, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes, read the file in a dry voice. Restraining order hearing. Case number 2025, CR 4782. My heart pounded. Madeleine's lawyer, Kenneth Morrison, stood up. Heavy set, wrinkled suit, rehearsed sympathy. Your Honor, my client has lived in constant fear since Mrs. King threatened her. We have a witness confirming the defendant said, and I quote, "Your next trip will be to prison." That is a direct threat. Judge Brennan looked at me. Do you confirm saying that, Mrs. King? Thomas stood immediately. Your Honor, context must be considered. I'm asking the defendant, the judge interrupted. I took a deep breath. Yes, I said it, but it wasn't a threat. It was a legal statement. I kept my voice steady. She sold family assets to fund an affair. That's a crime. Whispers rippled through the courtroom. Madeleine jumped to her feet. Liar! She's making this up to destroy me. Order! The judge banged her gavel. Sit down, Mrs. King. Only I ask questions here. Morrison continued, his voice dripping with false concern. Besides the threat, there's a child welfare concern. The two minors, Peter and Alice, are living in an environment full of tension. Mrs. King visits unannounced, makes accusatory remarks about their mother, causing emotional distress. I only visited once in an entire month, I burst out. The judge raised her hand. Mrs. King, please remain silent. She turned to Morrison. Continue. Peter has nightmares, Morrison said dramatically. He told his teacherate his mother and grandmother are always fighting. Alice has started wetting the bed again, something she hadn't done in 2 years. Therefore, we request Mrs. King be prohibited from contacting the children until this family matter is resolved. It felt like my soul was being ripped out. No seeing my grandchildren, no hugs, no more afternoons baking together. Tears filled my eyes uncontrollably. Thomas immediately stood. Your Honor, this is blatant manipulation. The plaintiff is using the children as weapons to pressure my client in an ongoing multi-million-dollar property dispute. We have evidence that Mrs. Madeleine King embezzled assets, sold family heirlooms, and used the money for an extramarital affair. That's not within the scope of this hearing. The judge cut him off. We're only addressing the restraining order. But, Your Honor, it's all interconnected. I understand your point, Counselor. The judge flipped through the file in silence. The weight felt eternal. Finally, she looked up. I grant the petition in part. My world collapsed. Mrs. Elena King is prohibited from approaching the family residence. I held my breath. However, the judge continued, visitation rights with her grandchildren will remain, provided the meetings take place in a neutral location under supervision, once a week. Not what I'd hoped for, but not the worst. Madeline wore a triumphant smile anyway. Outside the courthouse, I broke down in Harrison's arms, right there on the dusty sidewalk. I cried harder than I had since Robert died. She won, I sobbed. She separated me from my grandchildren. Harrison held me tighter. She hasn't won, Elena. This was one battle. The real war is still ahead. That night, I couldn't eat. I sat on the balcony staring into nothing. Harrison brought me tea, but I couldn't drink it. Late in the evening, he sat beside me. Elena, that woman doesn't know who you really are. She thinks you'll give up now, but I know better. He pulled out the folder again. Your son's company is drowning. In 6 months, he'll lose everything. But here's what Madeline doesn't know. I control those debts. I can forgive them or I can destroy him. The choice is yours. I stared at the numbers. $520,000. My son's entire future in my hands. There's something else, Harrison said. The forensic accountant finished his report today. He handed me another folder. Page after page of highlighted transactions, fraudulent invoices, unauthorized withdrawals. Caleb isn't a thief, the report concluded. He's incompetent and was systematically robbed by his wife. Over $340,000 disappeared over 3 years, all leading to accounts connected to Madeline and Julia Foster. So it was true. My son was a victim too, just too weak to save himself. What do you want to do? Harrison asked gently. I thought about Peter and Alice, about Caleb crying in his office, about the boy I'd raised versus the man he'd become. I'll give him one last chance, I said quietly. One, on my terms. Tuesday morning, we gathered in Thomas Bradford's conference room. Neutral ground, witnesses present, everything official. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing a simple grey dress. Harrison sat beside me. Thomas reviewed documents. Forensic accountant Paul prepared his laptop. 2 court witnesses stood ready. At 10 o'clock sharp, the door opened. Caleb walked in first, gaunt and hollow-eyed, suit hanging loose. He looked like he'd aged 20 years. Madeline followed in a tight red dress, thick makeup barely hiding her fear. Her arrogance was gone. Their lawyer came last. Thomas began coldly. Good morning. This meeting is for reconciliation, but everything will be recorded and may be used in court. He turned on the projector. Charts appeared on the wall. Over the past 3 years, more than $340,000 disappeared from King Logistics. He pointed at the red numbers: unauthorized transactions, fraudulent payments, illegal transfers. Caleb's eyes widened. He turned to Madeline, who'd gone pale. What? What is this? He stammered. Lies, Madeline shouted. All lies. Paul stood calmly. Nothing here is fabricated, ma'am. All data was pulled directly from the company's accounting system. He clicked to the next slide. Here's a $53,000 transfer to a joint account under the names Madeline King and Julia Foster. The name hit the room like a bomb. Caleb jumped to his feet, face drained. Julia, you put her name on an account with my money? David, let me explain. Explain what? I said coldly. Paul moved to the next slide. Property purchase in Miami, 2-bedroom, ocean view. Price, $280,000. Silence. Dead silence. Caleb staggered, grabbing the table. You bought a house with her? With my money? Madeline was cornered, eyes darting for escape that didn't exist. And there's more, I said, my voice cutting through the air like a blade. Thomas changed slides. Photos of Peter and Alice appeared. Peter alone at school. Alice's sunburned arm, records of missed school days, skipped meals. While you were busy with your lover and stealing money, I said slowly, your children were being neglected. The therapist we'd brought opened her file. I contacted the school. The principal is deeply concerned. Peter shows signs of aggression. Alice has regressed developmentally. Caleb broke down, burying his face in his hands. I didn't know. God, I didn't know. Because you never looked, I shouted, losing control. You were too busy being her slave to see she was destroying everything. Your company, your children, and your mother. Madeline jumped up, pointing at me. You're just a bitter old woman. You can't stand that your son has his own life. You call betrayal, fraud, and child neglect a life? I stood too. You're a liar, a thief, and a terrible mother. Enough! Thomas slammed his hand on the table. Both of you, sit. We sat, glaring at each other. Thomas opened the final folder. Caleb, your company owes $520,000. Those debts were acquired by Walsh through intermediaries. He has the legal right to file bankruptcy proceedings at any time. Caleb looked at Harrison, then at me, disbelief in his eyes. However, there's an offer. Thomas slid a contract toward my son. Your mother is willing to erase the entire debt if you agree to 3 conditions. Caleb read aloud, voice trembling. 1. Immediately divorce Madeline King. 2. Attend family therapy for at least 1 year. 3. Repay the $1,680,000 taken from my father's assets over 10 years, interest-free. The room was silent. I looked straight into his eyes. If you agree, I'll help you rebuild your life. The company can recover. You can reclaim your place as a father, something those children desperately need. And if I refuse, he whispered. If you refuse, I said firmly, I'll end it all. Madeline will be prosecuted for fraud and embezzlement. You'll go bankrupt. And I'll fight for full custody of Peter and Alice because both of you have proven yourselves unfit. Madeline screamed, Don't sign it! Don't you dare, Caleb! She's bluffing. Thomas slid papers toward her. This is the official criminal complaint already filed. The documents will be sent to the district attorney this morning. Madeline's face went white. Caleb looked at the paper, then at me, finally at Madeline. Caleb, don't do this, Madeline pleaded, tears streaming. Think about the kids, about our family. Family? Caleb turned to her, voice low but firm. You destroyed this family. You stole from my company, betrayed me, used my mother's money to buy a house with your lover, and now you dare talk about family? He picked up the pen. Madeline screamed, cursed, tried to grab the papers. Security held her back. Coward! Traitor! You'll regret this! Caleb looked at her steadily. I already regret it. I regret wasting 13 years before seeing who you really are. He signed. Madeline was escorted out, still yelling. When the door closed, silence filled the room. Caleb collapsed in his chair, sobbing uncontrollably. I walked over, placed my hand on his shoulder, and whispered, Now we start over, from nothing, together. He hugged me, and we both cried, because some things, though broken, can still be mended. Saturday morning, September sunshine streaming through my balcony doors. I sip coffee watching the city wake below. New York glows in the early light, vibrant, alive, full of possibility. So much has changed. Madeline is serving 200 hours of community service, cleaning a public children's center. The Miami apartment was auctioned to pay debts. Julia Foster disappeared when the money ran out. Funny how people like that always vanish. Madeline still tries to call the kids. Sometimes Peter answers, polite but distant. Alice cries afterward, but the therapist says time will heal. Caleb lives in a small Brooklyn apartment now. Modest but clean and bright. He works for a logistics company, not the owner, just an employee. Last week he told me, "Mom, for the first time in years, I sleep well. No deaths, no lies, no poisonous voice in my ear." He has shared custody. Tuesdays and Thursdays, the kids stay with him. And every Saturday, they visit me. Today is Saturday. I look at the clock. 9:15. My heart beats faster every time. The doorbell rings. I open the door. "Grandma!" Alice runs into my arms. Her hair's longer, 2 front teeth missing. She's grown so much. Peter follows, trying to act grown up, but still hugging me tight. "Grandma, we brought all the ingredients. Dad let us pick everything at the store." Caleb stands at the door, holding 2 big bags. He looks healthier, light in his eyes again. "Good morning, Mom." "Good morning, son." Harrison steps out from the kitchen, holding a dish towel. "Well, are we ready to make the best chocolate cake in America, my little chefs?" The kids cheer and rush to the kitchen. The kitchen becomes a sweet battlefield. Flour everywhere, Alice's hands covered in chocolate, Peter focused on cracking eggs like a scientist. Caleb stands beside me, whisking batter silently. After a while, he says softly, "Mom, thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me, even when I didn't deserve it." I place my hand over his. "You're my son. I can be angry, I can hurt, but I'll never abandon you." He quickly wipes away a tear. Therapy helped me see I was emotionally abused for years. She controlled every part of me. I'm not excusing what I did, but now I understand why I was so blind. "And now?" I ask. He smiles, genuine, warm, the smile I remember from his childhood. Now I feel free, like I'm alive again. The cake finishes baking. The scent of chocolate fills the apartment. We cut it, sit around the table. Peter talks about school. Alice shows me her drawing of our family, Grandma, Dad, the 2 kids, and Harrison, all holding hands. "Where's your mom?" Caleb asks gently. "She's on another page," Alice answers innocently, "because she lives far away now." Children have their own way of understanding things, simple yet profound. When they leave, Caleb taking the kids to the park, Harrison and I sit on the balcony. He takes my hand. "Elena, you did it. You rebuilt everything." "We did it," I say. "I couldn't have done it alone." I rest my head on his shoulder, watching the sun paint the city gold. "You know what I learned from all this?" I ask softly. "What's that?" That we don't have to settle for broken pieces. That self-respect isn't for sale. And even when life shatters us into 1,000 fragments, we can still piece ourselves back together. I turn to him. And when we rebuild ourselves with our own hands, we never return to what we were. "So what do we become?" Harrison asks, smiling. I smile back. "We become diamonds. They thought they could break me, but they didn't know I'd been shattered and reborn too many times. I learned how to become unbreakable. And diamonds, I continue, looking at the glittering city, at this man who waited 45 years to love me, at this life I'd built from ruins. Diamonds don't break, they only shine. Harrison kisses my hand. You've always been a diamond, Eleanor. I've just been waiting for you to remember. We sit in comfortable silence, watching the city live and breathe below us. Somewhere out there, people are struggling with their own battles, their own betrayals, their own choices about whether to give up or keep fighting. I hope they choose to fight. I hope they remember that family isn't always perfect, but real love has the power to heal even the deepest wounds. That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace over resentment. I once thought I'd lost everything, but in that loss, I found what mattered most: love, self-respect, and the true meaning of home. Home isn't a building. It isn't four walls and a roof. Home is where you're valued, where you're seen, where you're loved, not for what you can provide, but for who you are. And after 68 years, I've finally come home.